MOOCs, massive open online courses. I wondered about a subtitle. What would be the best subtitle for this talk? Lectures on the tube. That somehow didn't fit. Educational TV without that TV thing. What about more than 50 years of open education for massive audiences? That's what it's about, actually. MOOCs are just the latest incarnation of this phenomenon. I want to speak about the landscape of MOOCs, the current situation. I want to quickly review educational video. What are these 50 years of educational video? And then I want to talk in length about what has changed and what has not changed. In how far can MOOCs be compared to what has happened before, and in how far are they different? And finally, I hope I have some ideas about what broadcasters can be doing. First of all, the landscape. The term MOOC begins to get pretty blurry these days. It means massive, meaning, say, 1,000, 10,000, maybe even 100,000 participants. Open, in quotes, it's not really open. Open meaning everybody can participate. Nobody needs a specific degree or something to be able to, but it's not open in the sense that, say, Linux is open or Wikipedia is open. And online course, that goes without saying. It's online and it's somewhat like a course, a university course. The first MOOC was this one, the Connectivism and Connected Knowledge MOOC, 2008. By Stephen Downes and George Siemens. This is called a CMOOC. Nowadays it's called a CMOOC, a connectivist MOOC. You see, that comes from this name, Connectivism, that idea about learning. Learning is in the connections. It's not just the knowledge, it's in the connections, in the links that you make, in particular links that you make on the internet. This had 2,000 participants, and it wasn't a course as you know it. It was a collection of wikis. Some stuff happened on Twitter, some stuff happened on Flickr, whatever, and everything tied together with RSS feeds. These days RSS is slightly outdated, admittedly. Then the mother of all X-MOOCs. This is why we're talking about MOOCs. The X-MOOC, X standing for extension classes, evening classes, originally. The Stanford course by Sebastian Thun and Peter Norvig, with 160,000 participants, so not just 2,000, 160,000 participants. Eventually 23,000 of which got a certificate, meaning they went through the computer-graded exams at the end and got some PDF file saying they made it, which they were able to print out. This is why we are here. What does this sort of MOOC, the X-MOOC, look like? It looks like this. This is from my own. A collection of videos, video lectures, if you will. But lectures alone don't cut it. If you try to teach something complex with lectures, after 10 minutes or so, you've lost your audience. This is why lectures have to be broken into parts. And this is one of the key principles of the X-MOOCs. There's just a short video, maybe just a few minutes, maybe even less, and then we have a quiz, something to do for the student. So are you still there? We want to check if the student is still with us. We want to keep everybody busy. That's a little like in games. In a game, there is no longer stretch of doing nothing. You don't watch that game for a longer stretch of time. You work in that game. And it's about attention. We've got Facebook on the computer, we've got WhatsApp on the phone. We've got to get those learners' attention, grab those learners' attention, and you can do that with quizzes. There's actually already some studies on that. So this is how a quiz could look like. That's a multiple choice quiz. There's two sorts of multiple choice quizzes, those which are too easy and those which are somewhat challenging. This aims at being somewhat challenging, trying to make the learner think about it. In my own course, there's also programming tasks. The learner has to write small programs which are automatically graded. And there's a forum in almost all of these MOOCs, there's a forum where learners can ask questions and hopefully have somebody else answer them or discuss. As I said, the Stanford AI MOOC was the MOOC to get things started. Nowadays we have hundreds of them, so this site says it's more than 100 in progress. It's almost 300 upcoming and more than 200 finished. So this has become a mass phenomenon. There's tons of initiatives right now producing and publishing MOOCs. Sebastian Thun, after that AI course, started his own company called Udacity. Next door sits Coursera, which now is the biggest provider of MOOCs. On the other side of the US, Boston, we have edX, which started out as a cooperation between the MIT and Harvard, but now also involves other universities. Stanford themselves do have their own MOOCs, and there is a third spin-off from Stanford, NovaEd, producing MOOCs. And in the US, we have other providers. Canvas originally is a company that has created a learning management system. MOOC to Degree is from a company, Academic Partnerships, that is involved with e-learning, has been involved with e-learning for years. On the European side, maybe the first mover was the Hasso-Plattner Institute from Potsdam, OpenHPI. In Germany, we also had the Leuphana Digital School with one MOOC. There's another, and iVersity just finished a competition for production. In the UK, there's FutureLearn, which is cooperation of several universities with the Open University at its center. The University of Amsterdam, there's Spain, there's Portugal, there's a pan-European initiative, Open Up Education, Latin America, Australia. I do not know that much about Asia, I have to say. I guess there's lots of stuff happening in Asia as well. So that's, so to speak, a world map. As of now, every week or so we get one more participant in that game. These are companies or initiatives that produce and publish MOOCs. The thing most discussed when people talk about MOOCs is retention. That's like with every sort of distance education. Do you keep your learners all the way through? No, you don't. With MOOCs, it looks really bad. 5%, 1%. This MOOC made it to more than 30%, but the typical value is around a few percent, that's it. Of all those who register for a course, just a few percent make it. That looks devastating, but actually you invest nothing. You do not pay for that, and you invest just a little time. Even more so, most providers require everybody to sign on. To watch even a single video, you have to sign on. So I guess what's happening is that tons of people register to just get an idea of what's happening there, and then they leave, hence out of attrition. A lesson learned from distance learning is one has to use blended approaches. To get better retention, you have to have blended approaches. You have to somehow accompany the online material with face-to-face classes. So that's what we see happening. The big US providers, Coursera, edX, Udacity, all cooperate with community colleges, smaller universities, to have their MOOCs accompanied by local courses. You could say that's a blended approach, but actually that's not just a blended approach, it's about monetization. Those universities, those community colleges pay for that. If you wondered how do you get the money for free education, actually it's not free. It can be used for free by private persons. Those colleges, universities have to pay for being able to use these courses. I should be adding, one thing that's not happening so far is advertisement. To contrast, or to give a historical perspective, why do we have so many decades of video-based education? So one of the first movers was the NYU together with CBS in 1957. They actually awarded real certificates, real NYU certificates to, I guess, 100 or so of those participants. In Germany, we have the Telekolleg evening classes for high school, so to speak. The UK has the Open University. This final thing is interesting in the US. The Annenberg CPB project publishes material for schools, but also offers professional education for teachers. They are training the trainer, if you will. You saw that much of MOOCs consists of lecture recordings. Also, lecture recordings have quite some history. Microsoft has a project to preserve some lecture recordings of Richard Feynman, for instance. And if you look at what this looks like over the ages and what modern lecture recordings look like, same topic, it's in color. Well, that seems to be the difference. And it's on YouTube and less expensive to produce, but it looks more or less the same. When it comes to history of video in education, I guess Salman Khan has left his mark. In 2007, he has started with YouTube lessons, if you will. You can't call that lectures, YouTube lessons. And this evolved into Khan Academy through funding by Google and the Gates Foundation. This evolved into, if you will, an online school with practice and fora and whatever. The Khan Academy. And this style of videos is something I'm going to return to in a second. So what has changed, what didn't change? First of all, why does distance education suddenly make such a buzz? Why did it become fashionable? Suddenly it gets into the headlines. I guess it's, first of all, branding. It's a Stanford course. It's not Stanford extension or something, evening classes. It's a real Stanford course. It's a real Harvard course, a real MIT course. So I guess it's about branding. And of course, for free, even though you do not get a real certificate. You can print out some sort of certificate, but it's not a real Harvard certificate or a real Stanford certificate. In contrast to what you're paying for a real course of study, to those $10,000s of dollars, or maybe even $100,000s of dollars that you're paying. In contrast to that, a free course looks really great. I guess it's these 2 points which lead to the buzz in the media. We speak about educating the world. These are some participants of my own MOOC. That's pretty scattered with some bold places. I'll comment on that later on. So it's globalized education, if you will. The students who take part, the learners who take part, are not regular university type learners. They are older, way older. So this is data from one MOOC. Lots of MOOCs have way more silver surfers, quote unquote, than this one. Participants are older than you would expect university students to be, and participants are way better educated, formally better educated than you would university students expect to be. There's PhD, there's masters. This is not the regular type of people you find in a lecture hall. The number of topics, the diversity of topics is really astonishing. When this phenomenon started, everybody expected these topics to be centered around computer science, technology, engineering, mathematics. This is what everybody expected. With this list of 4 courses at least, to see, well, this doesn't look like STEM courses. Well, there are lots, of course. There's lots of computer science, lots of biology and stuff. There's also other courses. So we do see some diversity of topics. The level of these courses, you may guess from these names, the level is not too much more than evening classes for most of them. But then you see this announcement. So Udacity is going to produce an actual master program together with Georgia Tech. So there's quite a variety of levels, obviously, with the lower end being served better. Concerning the languages, everything started out in English, but we do see Spanish. If you remember the slide I showed before about the initiatives, there's lots of Spanish and Portuguese initiatives already. They also serve the Spanish and Portuguese communities, some French, and some Chinese classes on a US-based platform. That's interesting for me. When it comes to languages, you see the classes being taught in English, but many of them also have captions in other languages. You can crowdsource the captions. That's something maybe to learn from those MOOCs. If you want to go international, why not crowdsource the captions? For instance, this is from my own MOOC. Somebody actually added captions in Ukrainian. A vital point about those MOOCs, many of those are these Canstyle videos. I already mentioned Salman Khan, who started teaching mathematics and other things on YouTube in 2007. This style of videos is nothing new. That's the same style from 1981. Donald E. Knuth, the godfather of computer science, if you will, explaining some inner workings of some software. This style is really nothing new. It has been with us for decades, but Khan really made it very popular. The important thing about that style is that it's pretty much the opposite of what you saw before lunch. It's not the Harald Lesch style. There is no acting or something in here. It's just informal, colloquial, authentic, somebody explaining with very simple words how this specific thing in mathematics works like. You do not see a talking head. There is no fancy 3D graphics, no animations whatsoever. You just see somebody writing. That's it, period. There are no straight lines, there are no perfect circles, everything hand-drawn, handmade, very authentic. Short videos, maybe just 10 minutes, maybe less, very focused. That's some vital points about Canstyle videos. Canstyle videos are pretty cheap to produce. But then again, if you look at the production value of the MOOCs, sometimes it's really too cheap. I would wonder if this is too cheap. So it's just a PowerPoint slide being scribbled on. Speaking of cheap productions, we see MOOCs which are just old lecture videos with some quiz or activity inserted after half an hour. Look at these numbers. Half an hour of video, of lecture recording, and then there is some activity. This is not actually a MOOC. This is just lecture recording plus a small quantity of activities added. And we see stuff like that. That's from a course on scientific writing. Anybody who teaches scientific writing should know that this kind of slide isn't the thing to be using. So the level of quality is pretty mixed. Even though you see those big names, Stanford, Harvard, MIT, these names do not guarantee quality. But the thing that almost all these MOOCs have is interactivity, and this seems to be driving it, interactivity. This is from my own MOOC again. This is one single unit, and within this unit you see those small parts of videos. Every single of these rectangles is just a single video, just a minute maybe two. And all those dots indicate quizzes. So there's tons of quizzes. Almost every minute there's some quiz happening. Lots of interaction. And of course, in addition to that, you have the forum. So it's really a lean-forward experience. That's hard to reproduce with a basic television set. I'm going to comment on that later. But that's a different experience. It's not something for couch potatoes. If you look closely at the didactic design, or at the absence of didactic design in those MOOCs, that's sometimes really glaring. There's little time spent on graphics design. There seems to be even less time spent on didactic design. What everybody seems to be hoping for is learning analytics. If you have 100,000 participants, 100,000 learners, and you collect the data, this person got that quiz right, this person got that quiz wrong, and after that they watched this video and then they got that quiz right. If you collect these data, you can hope to be able to somehow improve your courses, to somehow do the right thing, to somehow turn the right knobs. But that's of course only after this thing has run. We should be thinking about these things before we put them online, not in hindsight. The standard X MOOC ends with a certificate. There's a computer-graded quiz, and if you manage to pass that computer graded exam, you can download some sort of PDF saying you made it, some sort of certificate, which is of course of no, or not of no value, which is of little value. It looks nice in an application letter, of course, if you can show to your future employer, I did these 7 MOOCs, why not? Even if those certificates are of no legal value. But if you want to get transfer credit for them, something has to happen. So there's cooperation with testing centers and cooperation with universities to actually do a proctored exam. Somebody watches over your shoulder while you take the exam and ensures that you are the one who you pretend to be. When it comes to delivery, internet video, in principle, internet video is available anytime, anywhere. In principle, in theory. Even in Germany, in some rural landscapes, we do have quite some issues with that. And if you're mobile, you may reach your limit, your monthly allowance. Some of these initiatives offer and download those videos and contrast that to what's happening on TV. You have to buy the Grundkurs Mathematik, Basics of Mathematics, you have to buy that set of DVDs for 50 euros, in contrast to getting it for free on the internet with the MOOC. So something has to give, either the MOOC or the standard way of doing distance education over television. I showed that map before. Not just rural parts of Germany have issues with low bandwidth. Of course, Africa has tons of issues with that. Issues with language, issues with the subjects actually being taught. They need different subjects. But first and foremost, they can't get access to these videos. You see that on that map as well. So access anytime, anywhere, well, not really anytime, anywhere. Most of these MOOCs we see today have deadlines, as you see on standard television-based courses. They run on a certain schedule and have a definite ending, a definite start and a definite ending. With video that's available on demand, you can start a different model. You can have self-paced courses. The learner can decide how long he or she is going to spend on that course. And it's not driven by deadlines. This has pros and cons. Deadlines are helpful to reduce procrastination. Students actually finish that thing and are forced to finish that thing. The discussion on the forum is focused on this week's topic. It's not about next week's topic and it's not about last week's topics. If 100,000 participants start a MOOC, you get way more media coverage than over the course of 1 year, 100,000 persons slowly hop on and hop off. If you want to get high numbers, that's the way to be doing it. Use deadlines. A self-paced course without deadlines is better for those learners who have a job. And self-paced courses open up the possibility to catch up. If somebody recognizes in midst of a course that he or she doesn't know about the mathematics that's needed, he or she can first look into the mathematics and then later return. You can't do that easily when the course has hard deadlines. And finally, we can aim at mastery. We can aim at students not learning 50% of that stuff. We can aim at students learning 100% of that stuff, if they take the time to actually do it. So that's an open debate. Maybe you have to have both, deadlines and self-paced. Additional material. There's not too many students asking about textbooks. There are some courses which actually prescribe textbooks to be bought, just some. Other courses, MOOCs, I should be saying, other MOOCs prescribed free books, open educational resources. And this is a new invention. There's quote-unquote free textbooks. edX, one of these initiatives, one of the bigger initiatives, and Elsevier have a cooperation, and Coursera and Czech, an online textbook provider, have a cooperation for making available textbooks, electronic versions of textbooks for quote-unquote free, but they can just be used if you register for one of these courses. They are not really free. It looks like a way of advertisement. Another new idea that came up with the MOOCs is to crowdsource tutoring. As a provider of one of these MOOCs, you do not need to hire tutors. Those tutors offer themselves to the public. You just create a website where everybody can register and say, I would like to be your tutor. And this is what my fee would be for that tutoring. Maybe that's something you can also use for televised classes. Licenses. I put that open in quotation marks early on. Open courses. Open is, well, not in every way these are open courses. This is from the terms of use of Coursera. As a private person, you can use these courses, but a university, a college cannot use these courses. A university or a college has to buy these courses. So be careful about the word open here, which is of course because Coursera wants to somehow make money on these. Everybody may teach. I didn't write everybody can teach, I wrote everybody may teach. In principle, everybody can go on to YouTube and some other places to start teaching. There's actually platforms which allow everybody to create their own MOOC if they want to. MOOCs that are open for free or MOOCs that are to be paid. This is one of those, Udemy, for instance. Anybody allowed to be teaching? I put a question mark behind that. In Germany, you would have to get some sort of license from the central bureau concerned with distance education if you want to be paid for that distance education. If that is for free, you're fine most of the time, but if you want to get payment, you need to get some sort of a license. This may be different in other countries. Through this process of opening up, we see tons of other players, people who we didn't see teaching on TV, people who we didn't see teaching on universities. We see spare time teachers, somebody who just told himself or herself, I'm going to be teaching about fractions or some sort of geometry. And you see professors acting on their own. The Marginal Revolution University is a project by two professors from George Mason University. I'm going to start with my own MOOC on relativity theory this summer with no funding whatsoever. And you see companies starting their own MOOCs to explain their own products. Microsoft starting a MOOC to explain how to develop software for the latest Microsoft tools. SAP starting their own MOOC to explain how to use SAP software, how to develop with SAP software. What does this mean for broadcasters? Broadcasting lectures, I guess, is a bad idea. Lectures don't work, as I said, for complex stuff. If you've got easy subjects, stuff that's close to what the audience knows, you can do lectures. For everything that's more advanced, from the viewpoint of the audience, of course, for everything that's more advanced, you do need something else. You can't just do lectures. So we have to have quizzes somehow, a forum somehow. Just rewinding. You missed the point, you want to rewind. Okay, you can do that with a video recorder, but that's somewhat awkward. Scheduling. You work till 6 p.m., but the TV schedule starts at 5 p.m. and whatever. It simply works better on the web. I would not broadcast lectures. There's some ideas about second screen applications. Could we have the lecture on the TV set and in our hand we hold a tablet or a smartphone and do a quiz on that second screen? This needs to be thought through. There's still room for experiments. We see some broadcasters embrace the web. So the BBC has these collections of small tutorials on English and math, for instance, on their website. In Germany, German radio, we had the Funkkolleg Medien, which was not really an X-MOOC. It was somewhat like a C-MOOC, a blend of an X-MOOC and a C-MOOC. It had lectures, but also tons of discussions on the radio, and you can take a written exam in your town if you want to. So here a broadcaster embraces the idea of a MOOC. And I see that broadcasters have assets that universities don't have and initiatives like Coursera and Udacity don't have. You have archives, really interesting stuff from old ages and from lots of different regions of the world. Make use of these archives. You have lots of on-site international reporters. What about a really up-to-date news report from a region that the MOOC is about, that the MOOC is covering? And like the BBC and German Telekolleg and Funkkolleg, broadcasters tend to have good connections to learning and testing centers, local learning and testing centers. You can put these to use, these good relations. And I guess most broadcasters, most public broadcasters at least, have lots of trust from the audience, from the public, concerning political neutrality and information privacy. I mentioned learning analytics before. Coursera, Udacity, edX, and so on collect data about who clicked which answer to which quiz, watched which video at which point of time, and so on and so on. These are huge collections of data, sensitive data. We want to have these data with somebody who we can trust. Maybe not some American company, maybe a company, an institution more local concerning information privacy. That's an asset. And I would like broadcasters to serve the underserved. First of all, what about national languages? Most MOOCs currently happen, if you will, happen in English with captions. Captions are poor when it comes to learning. You want to listen to somebody talking, you do not want to read stuff, which is distracting if you have something else, a diagram or so on the screen. We really want dubbing. We do not want captions, we want dubbing for the local audience. Accessibility. Most MOOC providers don't care about accessibility. What about the visual impaired? Broadcasters have some experience there. And broadcasters have access to, well, broadcast. In regions like Africa and rural Germany, broadcast makes sense when you do have a poor internet connection and can't get at those videos through the internet. Broadcasting makes sense. And eventually, I would like broadcasters to more support reworking, reusing and remixing. In Germany, we have some sort of law that allows use of broadcast material in schools, in some ways also in universities. But if you really want to go and remix that stuff, if I wanted to create my own lectures incorporating lots of material from broadcasters, I would be in trouble. I would really like the broadcasters to open up here and support stuff like Creative Commons rather than, this is a copy from one of these websites, rather than telling everybody this is just for your home use and nothing else. Thank you very much.